Today's guest leads one of the most iconic legacy brands in the world, Martin Guitar. And he leads with heart, creativity, and a deep love for the craft. Thomas Ripsam is the CEO of C.F. Martin & Company, a family business that's been making guitars since 1833, and they are revered by musicians across the globe. Thomas is a leader who understands that to guide a legacy brand, you must both honor its history and dream boldly into its future. What I admire most is that Thomas is not only a leader, he is an artist. Thomas, welcome to Always Lifting.
Hey, Karen, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome here. How are you? And let's get into some good stuff.
Absolutely. All good. Just coming off Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And heading into the next holidays soon, but it's a busy period for us. So,
I can
all
imagine.
Good. All great. Yep.
I can imagine. Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, you're a passionate artist, you're a guitar player, and now you're the CEO of Martin Guitar, a legendary guitar company. Whoa, like coolest gig ever. How did you find yourself on this path?
Well, I always say when I was born, I already knew one day I would be the CEO of Martin Guitar. No, I grew up in Germany. And, come from a pretty humble home. Money was tight. Our parents, they struggled a little bit with the marriage. But I had several outlets, I think, from my childhood that kind of kept me sane, but also opened my interest in experiencing the world. And those outlets were music, art, reading, outdoors, nature, and really started early. And the trigger for music was my dad's singles collection. And, one of the singles I remember was Elvis Presley playing guitar, his Martin acoustic guitar, and Scotty Moore, his electric guitar. And that was when I was a child listening to that music. And I think from then on, music became really important. The guitar became my favorite instrument. I started to learn when I was in my teens. But, growing up in a humble home, one thing that was also important for me was I knew I had to earn my living, right? And so I did an education in business. Did college, 2 years in England, 2 years in Germany. And then after college, had a 25-year career in consulting.
I think I remember seeing a lot of strategy and
strategy
stuff
consulting, working with consumer goods companies, retail tech, all over the world. But in parallel, my whole music passion was always the other big part of me, and my passion for art as well. And so before Martin, I had a time in my life when I more actively thought about, hey, I love business and I love the problem solving that comes with consulting. But I also love the creative side, music, arts. And I want to find something where I can bring those two things together. And, magically, the Martin opportunity surfaced. And, I got involved in the process and things worked out. And it was like a dream come true. I mean, it's like bringing my two halves together into what I do now. And the third piece about Martin, other than it's music and I love music, it's business, I love business, was I love to work with companies where people and the culture are the center of everything. And that's exactly what Martin is, right? I mean, it's all the people. So it's incredibly humbling for me to be part of Martin and in this role as the first outside CEO. And when I think about it, I have to kind of, pinch myself.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
I love, three things for you coming together and lining up. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. It's almost like it was meant to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then, as you mentioned, you're the first non-family CEO for Martin Guitar.
Yeah. So Martin Guitar is a sixth generation, still family-owned business, almost 200 years old now. Originally from Germany, but they set up their business in the U.S. in 1833, like you mentioned, and always run by family members. And in 2021, Chris Martin, who had been the CEO for 35 years and primary owner of the business, announced his retirement, move into executive chairman role. They have a daughter, but the daughter was not old enough to take over. So that's why they decided to bring somebody in from the outside.
Exciting. So you're
Very
this
exciting.
steward, and I think it sounds like you take the responsibility of managing this. I think, what is it, like 190 plus years? You're almost at 200 years.
Yep, yeah, almost 200.
Which is fantastic. Being the steward of that and stepping in, and I think it is a really big deal to help a family in that way, and you probably are providing some really unique new perspectives, I would think, too.
Right. So, at Martin, we do have this phrase, and I think it's a beautiful phrase. It's 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future. Because the past is such an important part of what the brand is all about. But as you know, if you don't stay in the today and think about tomorrow, you're not going to stay relevant and you're not going to be successful. And in my consulting career, I worked with a lot of companies that had a long history, and I've seen different paths, right, where companies they lost kind of their way, others continuously evolved. So I think with that background, I definitely think about this phrase 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future every day, right? Because we can't lose either one in moving forward without risking to lose this special sauce, but also the success that the Martin company has experienced, right? Throughout almost 200 years, with some booms and some tough times, but always able to move with the times. And today, last year we had the best year in the history of the company, right? And that's continuous build. And I think it's exciting. And the other thing to mention, not to talk too much about it, but the other thing that excited me about the role was that the music industry is changing at all levels.
Yeah.
Big change, right? And so you simply cannot rely on your laurels and just look back. We really do have to evolve, and that's a lot of the work we're focused on right now.
Exciting. It's
totally
the ability to preserve the soul of the business and this amazing story. I love.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of our role as CEOs and businesses in general, we have to tell the story of our business, make it unique so it stands out, but then also attracting employees, keeping them motivated, having that beautiful purpose that we get inspired to go to work every day. It's so important. And you're doing a great job of pulling all of those pieces together. And if I go back to this 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, we were talking a little earlier. I told him I was going to be speaking with you today. And he's like, oh, this is so cool. And he's a furniture maker. And he's like, I wonder, ask him about his jigs. Does he have fixtures that are older than I am that they're using? And you had a really great share the, a little bit about how you're looking at the past with some of how you make your product and how you're moving into new technology. And I thought that was a great example of doing that on the manufacturing floor, right? In your processes.
Yeah, totally. Martin really started with, handcrafted guitars that involve tools, but basic tools, right? Fixtures and stuff like that. But over the 200 years, when you look at how the craftsmanship evolved, the company always maintained the human touch, but also looked at ways to improve how we manufacture and how we do it at scale, right? So just to give you an idea, the company today manufactures around 130 to 140,000 guitars every year. Right, and there are 2 locations, one in Nazareth and one in Mexico, in the north of Mexico. And so to be able to make these guitars, this quantity and the quality at scale.
That's a thing.
Right. It's just hard if you want to do that all solely with people, right, and people's work. So the idea of technology, I think, has been around for a long time with Martin. Way before me, they introduced robotics for polishing, for example. Polishing is a big part. We have CNC machines, right? We have a sawmill. So, I mean, we have different things. We have a robot that runs around in our factory that you actually will see. Usually, when you're on a tour, you may see the robot.
Nice. Delivering parts to different
delivering
areas,
parts, yeah. And so it's an integral part of how we think about what we do and how we do it. And it's a continuous evolution, right? And so yes, we still have some old fixtures. There is in our machine room there is a drying wheel that basically has. We still use it sometimes for gluing backs together, and it's literally like a wheel where the backs are stacked like this, and then it dries, and that's very old. But we also have, as I mentioned, robotics, and AI is a big topic for us also now, and it's a topic that covers all aspects of the business.
So interesting, right? And I'm sure there's ways to keep that acoustic quality and all of the craftsmanship, and but yet making sure you're not missing something, right?
Yeah.
With the new technology.
Right, and technology for us, it's not the goal is not to replace the human work, right? Categorically, the goal is really to think about the parts of the process where, frankly, it's highly repetitive. It might be ergonomically difficult.
Well, think about polishing, right? That's definitely one that
right.
is repetitive.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, efficiency where we can use machinery or technology, but then also being very clear about where does the human touch really make the difference, right? And so, for example, in our guitars, I mean, I have a guitar here, but this is the headstock. I don't know whether people can see it, but we have these inlays in our guitars and the headstock and the fingerboard, the rosette around the sound hole, and a lot of these things are still inlaid by hand.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and so.
And this is your guitar you brought with us today.
This guitar is actually one that I designed. Yeah. So Chris Martin, he introduced a series when he was still the CEO that was about a CEO designed guitar that allows the CEO to experiment with, either different materials or different shapes or different aesthetics, sometimes different sounds. And so when I became the CEO 2 years ago, 3 years ago was actually my first CEO guitar that I designed. He basically said, well, you're the CEO now. Why don't you have a go at it? And so I designed my first CEO guitar, and it was pretty traditional, used a lot of vintage features. This is my second CEO guitar. We introduced it earlier this year at the NAMM trade show, which is a global big trade show for us. And so for this guitar, I wanted to do something completely different, right? And what's different? Color. So
beautiful color.
So we don't really use a lot of colors. Except through our custom shop. We have a custom shop where dealers, distributors, or artists can spec their own designs, right? So colors come in there sometimes. I think colors are incredible, a source of the part for a guitar, and so I wanted to do something with colors. This is a color that we came up with. We experimented a lot. I knew it should be blue.
Why blue?
But what kind of blue? Well, because I like the color blue.
Inspired by blue. So.
Yeah, I love the color, but it had to be, it had to look classy and good. And so, we came up eventually with this color. It's called New Horizons Burst. This is what we call a burst feature, which is basically the shading towards the edges. I also wanted to experiment with different materials. So this is German white oak.
Okay.
And you don't see a lot of guitars out there with oak in general. And the fact that we had German white oak, and as a German, to me, that was a nice touch.
I love that, yeah.
For me. And then, I had to figure out what kind of size guitar. I love this type of size, which is we call it a quadruple O size. And so it had all these pieces, but the key was also we needed to make sure it sounds good, right? And frankly, with oak, M style, the quadruple O size, and some of those things, we didn't quite know yet how it actually would sound, but it sounds really good. And so this is the CEO 11 because it's 11 in the series.
And I saw that you have this beautiful inside of it, a little marking that designates it CEO 11. There's a couple signatures inside of there.
Exactly. So this is limited to 1111. So it's CEO 11, 1111, limited to that. It's hand signed. Each of them is hand signed by me. And so, yeah, it all came together. And then the other thing I always like to, I know you're very interested in storytelling, right? So there's always a question, what's the story about the guitar and how do you talk about it? And obviously there are the aesthetics, there's the tone, but then I also started to do some research into the number 11. Is there something specific about the number 11?
Fun.
And I figured out in numerology, there is this concept of master numbers. And master numbers come with special meaning and powers. The number 11 stands for inspiration, enlightenment, and yeah. And so I thought about, okay, so what can we do about this guitar to also communicate the enlightenment or inspiration part? And so we used this logo, this image, which is actually the Buddhist symbol for the path to enlightenment. So you literally, this represents the path to enlightenment.
Fantastic.
And obviously it all points to Martin. So Martin, in the end, leads to enlightenment. So that's the CEO 11.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, and you know, I know you have actually produced your own album, right? And I was listening to some of your music this morning in the last several days, which feels like inspired by, you know, this 11 and this concept of enlightenment there. I really enjoyed it. How does that all play into this too? Was that part of the journey of the guitar, or just something you again, certainly you're learning about you use your products, you're learning about your products, right? Learning about how, and then I just love the whole circular vibe of it all.
Totally. Well, I think the whole creating music, songwriting, and recording part, it's something I've loved for a long time. And, you know, it's obviously connected to the instruments, but I think it's on its own journey, right? So, and you listened to the New Horizons album.
And Seeds of
Imagination. That's my band. That's
love
my
the
band,
name.
right?
I
Seeds
feel
of
like,
Imagination.
No, it's appropriate that I immediately felt a great vibe and connection with you. I love this idea, and I like to talk more about imagination. But the seeds and gardening and growing and all of it just feel so interesting. And
but that album, you know, if you actually listen to it, there is no acoustic guitar on it.
Okay.
And that was intentional, right? Because the other two albums or three that you find on the streaming platforms, they all had acoustic. They're heavily acoustic guitar influenced.
Okay.
And so, you know, for me, what I love about creativity and art and music is, first of all, you can do whatever you want, right? But for me, what excites me is every new thing has to have some intention behind it, right? And that's where it gets a little bit hard, because with music and instruments and everything that's at your disposal nowadays, you literally can do whatever you want. But how do you pick something that is meaningful to you, and hopefully to other people as well? But you know, so the inspiration for that last album was, okay, I had done acoustic centric music. I wanted to do something that's not acoustic, right? And so it's more electronic, it has more rhythm, it's more rhythm based. But I also sang on the other albums. There's no singing on this album.
Oh, so I have to go back. I'm going to have to listen to
do an instrumental. And
yeah.
And what's the theme actually behind the album is I was thinking about the music as music for a movie about a journey, right, that somebody goes through. And so the first song is called Farewell, right? It's basically this idea of a departure. And then, I mean, I didn't want to prescribe what the movie would be about, other than there's a journey aspect. So whoever listens to it, you should listen to it thinking about a journey.
Okay.
Or maybe one of your own journeys, and think about some different parts or situations or stops along, right, a trip you did, and then think about these songs to me, that's what made these songs come to life, right? Because I thought about trips I had done, and some of the things that I would emotionally connect to. Anyway, so
that's awesome.
And
I
that
can totally
excites
get
me,
that.
right?
Yeah, I can totally get that vibe from what I was listening to, and I love the intentionality you have in that. Again, storytelling through your music as well. And then, do you have a process of how you get inspired to do something like that, or is it more you're just sort of like feeling it and?
Yeah, I get inspired by, it could be sounds I hear, things I experience, books I read. It's different inspirations and sources. But usually I need to be in a period where I get creative, right? I can't do it ongoing.
Yep.
It just doesn't work. I have to be in the zone, because when I start something, and that's maybe also part of Thomas, when I start something, I don't like it to just linger and go on. I like to finish it. And so, and once you start to get into it, I mean, you do a lot of different things,
Yes.
right? Like book writing and other stuff. It really requires a lot of focus. It's hard work, and it's very consuming, right? And it's not a work day or half a work day or 2 hours here. It's a constant, because
Right, and you're trying to find that balance between
Yeah.
enjoying the process,
Totally.
and then having it become work, which takes away from the process, right? Like sort of
Right.
keeping it in the space.
Yeah.
Is there anything you do to, like, a practice you have of carving out this creative space, this creative ability to have zone time, or even best practice? CEOs we can be busy all the time if we
Right.
want to, if we don't
Yeah.
put boundaries around it. What are some of the things that you do to be able to?
Well, I
be
think
there?
I definitely carve out time for the things that matter to me, right? My family matters a ton.
Love that.
And I carve out, we have 4 kids. My wife and I, Kathleen, she's actually half American, half Venezuelan. We have been married for 30 years, 4 kids, multicultural backgrounds. And so it's an important part. Music, of course, is an important part. Reading. And I've learned, if you don't make the time, right, there are always enough reasons that it won't happen. So I do make time. And I'm also a big believer in kind of the work as a CEO often is very, very intense, and you do need something that gives you the balance, kind of the mental balance.
Yeah.
And so I meditate. I use things like the art or music, like painting. To me, it's like meditation, because it draws you into something that's, in the end, it's actually quite simple, right? And
Is there a type of meditation you like? I'm a meditator as
Yeah.
well. Is there a type of meditation you do, or is it?
So, I mean, it's mainly breathing.
Okay.
Right. I use an app called Calm.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
I use that every day, and I never really crack the intent of not thinking, right, or just letting things go. But I think it's not a lot of time every day, but it is time that I always look forward to, and it's kind of my time. And I always do it in the morning. It's actually the first thing I do when I get up in the morning. I spend time to meditate, and it sets you up for the day.
does.
Yeah.
We're the same ilk. I meditated. I practice TM meditation, transcendental meditation. Not always. They want you to do it twice a day. I'm not always good about twice a day. Pretty good. But the morning,
pretty good,
it's
yeah.
like a requirement. Like if I don't do it, I miss it. And I don't know what, I know there's so much science that's even unfolding more recently too about how meditation is so good for us, and,
Right.
and what it's doing for our brains, and the ripple effects it has in our life. But I feel like I don't drink anymore, but I feel like it's like a glass of wine in the morning that like keeps me like calm and just kind of gets that vibe going for the
Totally.
day, and it
Yes,
holds for a while.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it's. I find it very useful, and it's good for my own sanity.
Yes, yes, I totally appreciate that.
But
Yeah.
maybe one thing to mention about the creative side, kind of the making music, creating music, and to me there is a link to business, and it's I thought about what's the connection between consulting and art or music, right? And to me, what it actually was is for both, you actually need a few things for it to work, right? You need to have a vision. You need to ultimately break down the vision in lots of details, but those details all have to connect back to the vision. You have to execute, but I think you also have to know what good looks like, right? And if you think about business, that's what I think about a lot, right? What's our vision? We have always so much going on at Martin, and does it all connect, right? And is it so the execution part, you have to be able to execute, but I think the other thing you also need to know is what does good really look like, and that gets back to, if you look at today versus 2, 3, 5 years from now, I think good will look very different, right? 3, 5 years from what good looks like today, and as a leader, I think you need to kind of know that, and you need to inspire your leadership team, right, to have that kind of mindset, and that's work.
Yeah,
that doesn't just come naturally.
In that context, when you're saying what does good look like, is it, I mean, maybe it's all what good looks like for the company's success versus what good looks like for, like, music is changing, and or the way, I mean, I guess AI probably is going to affect your industry. I wasn't even thinking about that in the world of making music. And
totally. Yeah. Well, I think if you look at any industry that a business is part of, there are some intrinsic things that you need to be able to do just to compete. Right. But then, to me, what's important, and that's how I grew up in terms of my strategy background, you really need to think about what's unique about you. Right. And I think a lot of companies struggle with that. And kind of the way I grew up, how to get to that is that when you look at some companies, especially companies that have been around for a while, what gives them the ability to be unique is the capabilities they have and how they apply them, right? So in our case, it might be craftsmanship. That is, you could say, well, every guitar manufacturer has craftsmanship. But when you look at what we can do at scale, I mean, we create guitars that may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then we create guitars that may cost a few $100s, right? And there are a lot of price points and models, and that requires not just the craftsmanship, but also to be able to deal with complexity and all that.
Yeah.
So there's a capability behind that, that you can't just say, well, I'm going to put it in place and then I have it, right? Because it actually takes a long time to get there, and that's kind of how I think about what makes you unique. Is what do I do better than anybody else out there? Right, so that's we used to call it in the consulting world capabilities-driven strategy. I'm a big believer in that. And then the other thing is, once you know what's unique about you, if you think about, you invest $1, where do you invest it? Do you invest it in all the latest fads, or do you actually invest it in the thing is unique about you? And my belief is you need to continue to invest in the things that give you the advantage, right? And that's how you further and further and further your uniqueness. And that's important. Your question also tied to, I mean, how do you know what good looks like? I mean, I think it comes back to understanding your stakeholders, right? In our case, we have a family. It's a family-owned business, and there are certain needs and expectations. Some are very business focused, others might not be so business focused. There might be other needs. So that's important. For Martin, community has always been a very important stakeholder. Employees, of course, right? And then consumers, the players. So really understanding the stakeholders and understanding how will they perceive value, right? And whether you meet their expectations. I think that's really important. And then, even though I love to be creative and try to come up with a new solution for everything, not everything requires a new solution, right? So there are things that, frankly, you can look at how some companies do finance or HR, and you don't need to think about something very innovative to immediately know Well, they do most of their work manual, where technology actually should cover that. And they should rather spend their time on actually engaging with their employees and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So for some of these things, with experience, you will know what good looks like. For some areas where there's a lot of change, right, and AI is a good example, where at this point it's not just hype. It
Right.
is happening, and it's happening at all levels, including individuals and how they use AI in their own life. So that's something that is so fast-paced, is very disruptive, and there's a lot of experimentation, right? So you don't necessarily know what good
Right.
looks like. So, but that's where I think you need to make sure that you have an open mind, you learn and figure out how do we make AI part of ourselves without giving ourselves over to AI,
Right. Well,
which
sounds like I want to talk a little bit about reading, but it's like the sci-fi books, right? Like, how do we not, lose ourselves to the AI is in so many? And
right.
it sounds too like, I mean, this advice about finding out, what is unique about what you do is so great for anyone listening, and makes me very reflective on, what we're trying to do at American Crane and what I'm
Sure.
always thinking about. And I love this kind of curiosity that you have on being curious and pulling the threads and learning more, especially about something. I mean, AI is sort of this easy one to pull out because it's right in front of just about everybody.
Right.
But we can do that with other things too, like just pulling on the threads and being curious.
Totally.
And I think we have to be curious as
I think
leaders.
you have to be very curious, right? And I think we have to understand our context very well to figure out how do we create an environment where people naturally become curious. And the reason why I'm saying this is with long kind of companies with a long history, right? The risk is sometimes that people think because we've been around for so long, everything we do is the way it has to get done. Right. And so how do you get out of that mindset, right? At Martin, a couple of years ago, we introduced something which is, it sounds so trivial, but we thought we actually experienced quite a shift. And that was, we introduced a consumer moment. So at every meeting, kind of management meeting, somebody will talk about, bring a consumer moment, right? And it can be a post that a consumer posted on Instagram, or it could be a visitor that visits us and shares a story about themselves, right? And so we introduced that. It was interesting. In the beginning, all the examples were positive examples, right? All good, right? Always,
Interesting.
Martin is great, Martin is the best, blah, blah, blah. And so we said, well, are there no bad kind of feedback examples or things like that? And so then people were looking more for a balanced view, right? And so of course there are good and bad examples, but the point we wanted to make as management is, bad examples are not bad, right? They're learning moments for us, and but the trigger was really to say, well, should we really only go after good examples, or aren't there also other examples, right? And that's, to me, the curiosity, where you observe something in your company and you start to ask questions, and that's your curious mind.
Yeah.
And those questions sometimes are the things that can move you forward big time.
Right. Those frustration moments or different pieces or challenges, or you said the consumer moments or customer moment. I love that. I might have to incorporate that into what we do at American Crane. I think that's really a great idea.
Or the other thing, just another cultural thing at Martin that was really interesting was, because Martin has been a family business for so long, we have lots of situations where multiple generations of coworkers work in the company.
Yeah.
Right? You may have somebody whose parents or grandparents worked there. And that created this sense of, well, we're all part of the family, right? And during COVID, during the pandemic, we hired a lot of new people because interestingly, the guitar industry actually experienced a boom.
Everybody was probably learning at home,
Everybody
and
was,
I can
picking
see
up
it.
an instrument or spending more. And so we needed to scale up the business, and we hired people. And so you had this mix of tenured, right, and in some cases highly tenured part of our workforce, and then some brand new people. And interestingly, the word family came up a lot. And so we started to ask, so when you're kind of a recent joiner, what does family mean to you, right? And they said, well, it's kind of hard to become part of it, right? And then, of course, the more tenured folks, they said, well, family, right? And two different ways of actually referring to family.
And not all families function well, right? It's a difficult word.
Exactly. But there was a common theme around it, right? I mean, because people know what family means. I mean, exactly what you say. The different members in the family, and the dynamics are not always perfect, but the family aspect is you take care of each other and you care for each other. But to us, there was a learning moment, right? That we need to make sure that people who recently joined, they feel part of the family, and we make it easy for them to become that.
Do you have any best practices that you're doing for onboarding, or, I'm always interested because I believe in, also CEOs, culture is our responsibility.
It is.
How do we foster and keep a great culture great and going on? Are there any tips or tricks that you have that have worked or that you've implemented recently?
Yeah. We do spend a lot of time on onboarding, right? And it's the onboarding in our case covers really the different aspects of what Martin is all about, right? The history, our products.
Which
what's
I want to say, by the way,
important.
you have such a wonderful tour of your facilities. So anybody who's in the Nazareth there, they should come and check it out. I feel like you tell that story for external, which I imagine you can use for onboarding as well. I mean, so beautifully, the history.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the tours are great. It's a great experience. We do factory tours, museum tours, and we also have a store. And so, and when people see how these guitars are made, I think they appreciate why some of our guitars also cost quite a bit.
Yeah.
They're not cheap instruments, but it comes from what goes into making the guitars. So, yep. But in terms of onboarding, so in the beginning, really important to learn about the company, but also to get to meet people, right? And people usually, they may join a department, but we really love to get people exposed to different parts of the business in terms of other teams and individuals. We talk a lot about culture, and we also have mentorship.
That's great.
So we have different ways, but it is really important to focus on because needs of the workforce have changed. We have now 5 different workforce generations in the business, and each generation has its own needs. And so, it's important to have a good pulse on what's going on with our people and what's on their minds. We have, I had once a month, I invite something like 10 or 12 people from all over the business, different levels, different departments, into an hour, right? Where part of it is a theme. I may talk about some things, but I'm really curious what they want to talk about. We have stand-up meetings, more within departments, weekly stand-up meetings, and our executives are mandated. It's mandatory for them to join some of the stand-up meetings, not just in their own areas, but in other areas as well. So this whole cross,
great.
Right?
Breaking down silos, or
people,
keeping from silos happening, pollinating. I think that's awesome.
Exactly. So we're trying to do as much as we can there without disrupting the business too much.
Well, culture is this labor of love, right? It's a continuous process. I always like to say it's like gardening. You can't stop. Like you can do it. You'll get some harvest, but you have to be planting and tilling and weeding and watering, and you have to
kind of keep going. Very intentional.
Keep going, and there's always this talk about mindsets and then behaviors. I firmly believe in focusing on behaviors, right, and that changes your mindsets. It's great. We focus a lot on culture. We talk a lot about culture in the context of our strategy and the direction and what's going on in the world, and but we also try to make sure we don't just do too many new things around culture, right? So it's a few behaviors at a time, like the consumer moment, which was all about let's get a better understanding what's going on with our consumers. Simple, right? And the other thing that was important was that consumer moment is not just relevant for our salespeople or our marketing people. It's also important for our people in legal because we want them to think about that as well and understand ultimately whatever we do, it has to make sense for somebody that wants to create music or pick up an instrument, and we want to be that choice.
You talked before about human touch and where you're touching your products, and I feel like this is, you're actually creating that human touch of who are the end users and bridging that gap. So it just makes everything probably more effective and
absolutely
ownership, accountability, pride, I would think as well.
Absolutely. And our production is largely organized by functional departments, right, that cover a step in the process or steps in the process. And a lot of the folks will work on these steps. They don't work on the whole guitar. Right. So it's even more important for them to understand, well, ultimately, where does this all end up and what am I contributing? That's why, we try to bring that into kind of your everyday.
It's great.
That you don't lose sight of that.
Yeah. Well, I want to pivot to another topic before we run out of time today.
Sure.
And one thing that I thought was so fun when we actually met for the first time was we ended up talking about books and reading. And I think we were talking about fiction. And I have this belief that really you need to read fiction as well as what I'll call self-help or the business books, which I definitely read and listen to. But it is fiction that can teach you, so much. We learn by stories, right? We were talking about storytelling for brands and for your company, which is basically teaching people and learning what you're doing and why, what's the value. So we're learning that way, but we're also learning. We can learn leadership skills. We can learn behaviors, how best to, our brain is made for this. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts around reading fiction and what kind of fiction are you into and how that helps us dream up the future.
I read all kinds of books. Some of the things you mentioned, right? Self-help, nonfiction, business books for sure. But I also like fiction books and fiction. I love adventure stories. And interestingly, I love stories that have this journey aspect. It's somehow when I reflect on a lot of things in my life, even where I come from, the small, village in the south of Germany, and now I live here in the States, and I'm married to somebody half American, half Venezuelan. It's all there's this moving, right? The journey aspect, and so. I love biographies. I love fiction stories, like Hornblower or the Master and Commander, that series with Aubrey and Maturin. So adventure, I love. I think we talked about Tolkien when we had our talk together, which is an annual reading ritual for me.
Nice.
I still read it
every. Oh, wow, that's great.
Yes, and we also watch the movies with the kids, and by now we know every phrase in the movies. But to me, we know so much, but fiction stories, I think they take you to a different horizon, into a different horizon. Or I often love to use the phrase "art of the possible," and because to me, the art of the possible, it's something that I always see a frontier that I'm close to. And then I have to remind myself, that the art of the possible goes way beyond what I naturally would think about, and that opens so much for me. Right?
It's almost exercising our imagination and
Totally.
thinking and getting used to that, which I think you do beautifully in so many other areas as well with the music, which you talked about journey with your music, but it teaches us to kind of think outside of our constraints of where our mind
Totally.
takes us. And that's, I think, super valuable when dreaming up the futures in life. And also values. And I love this idea that you say about journey. One of my favorite phrases is journey before destination. Sometimes it's that journey that is the beautiful part. And
That's what it's all about.
yeah,
right?
we get so focused on the end, we'd miss the
Totally.
beautiful part in
Totally.
between.
Yeah, and recently I've forced myself to pick up kind of physical books again, because I believe when you read digital books, you read differently than when you
Interesting.
actually have a physical book in your hand, and I also think it helps you to focus more. Same with music. I'm into vinyls again, and I just love the idea of picking an album, a vinyl album that's physical,
Yeah.
and you're stuck with it, right? Because you can't just listen quickly and then flip to the next one, flip to the next one, flip. So there's something about being in the moment, but also removing all these options.
Yeah.
and
Maybe even a
keeping
slow
things-
down.
slow
Slowing
down,
down of-
right? And I do think back to books, you process differently if you read something, having a book in your hand versus a digital book.
Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said. If you look into the future now, just to kind of wrap us all up, like, okay, so it's almost 200 years
You
now.
mean like
from
the
our-
next 2 weeks or so?
No, you got to push your mind. We just talked about reading and
Sure.
dreaming.
Yeah.
What's in store for Martin Guitar in the next, 50 or the next 200 years? Anything stand out in your mind or?
Well, I think next 200 years, that's such a time horizon.
It is a
that
big time horizon.
impossible to really imagine what things will look like. But I think for Martin, evolution has always been important, going with the times, but knowing who you are is always important. We are in our industry, and there are certain things that we need to do really well, right? So our products and the quality of our products are really important. Our connection with artists, really important. Our connection with consumers and players, offline and online, really important, right? So over the next few years, we know where we need to continue to evolve, and it's a step at a time. And little things that over time, when you look back, actually create the future.
And it comes back to this phrase that you've said before: one foot in the past and one foot in the future, right? Like
Exactly.
honoring both sides and knowing that balance of how to shift. It sounds like you're set up.
Yeah,
for great
one
success with
example, one area we haven't talked about, but that ties to your question is sustainability, right? And I mean, with our instruments, traditionally, we've used organic materials, woods, right? Really important. They are sourced from all over the world. And some of those tone woods become harder to source, more expensive to source, rarer, more regulated. And so Martin has been on this path to look for alternatives for decades. We were actually the first guitar manufacturer to adopt a formal environmental policy,
Awesome.
Responsible sourcing, those kind of things. But that's certainly an area where we don't take it slowly, right? Because I think the future is here, and it's creating more and more pressure to look for alternatives, to also better utilize the materials that we have used, right? So ebony is a good example. Like this is an ebony fingerboard here, the black fingerboard, and traditionally, a lot of the guitar manufacturers only used a portion of the ebony wood, which was the black wood, but the tree actually has different colors, right?
Smart. So you're using more of the resource you have.
So now we're using more of the ebony, right? Not just the black part, even though this fingerboard is black. We also have used alternatives to ebony. It's called Richlight, also for quite a while. So I think sustainability, especially environmental sustainability, that part is something where I think Martin has been quite a bit on the forefront, and I think we continue to push the envelope there because we have to.
Yeah. I'm sure it speaks to your the people who love your products, brands, and guitars. Like, I'm sure that it just adds to that beautiful.
A lot of
story
those
and legacy.
people who love Martin, they probably would love to have more a foot in the past with when it comes to tradition. But I'm a firm believer, right? If you think about the entire player base, especially the younger ones, I think the how responsible you are with the environment is becoming more and more important.
Yeah.
And so yes, you have to cater to tradition, but you also need to look for opportunities to create alternatives, right? And also educate people out there on what the reality is.
So interesting. So I have one question for you. So you came in here today. I had a few of our staff was starstruck of as I mentioned before, about Martin Guitar, and so excited. Is there any fun story now that you've been in your role of any moment that you've had where it was just the coolest thing that you saw that Martin was a part of that just you were like, oh, this is, I don't know, it's something fun.
It happens every day when we imagine new products. I always think, am I really sitting here and participating in these discussions? It's that artists, I love to connect with artists, and earlier this year we opened a showroom in LA, and we are in an area, it's called Center Staging, where bands prepare for their tours, and then we have a showroom. And so we had this one day where I was visiting, and we heard that Paul McCartney may stop by. And so we had a certain window when it might happen, and it didn't happen. And but an hour later or so, I was talking to another artist who was also in the showroom, and I see Paul McCartney and his manager walk into the showroom. And that is just something that doesn't happen easily. But, with somebody like Paul McCartney, to be able to spend some time together, that was just magical.
It's awesome.
And that was really awesome.
It
was super cool.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and for the remarkable way that you're lifting, Martin into the next generation and its next chapter, but the people into the next chapter, and all of the great insights on how you live your life, which I so appreciate. And you really remind us that leadership isn't only strategy, it's soul. Creativity, reading, artistic expressions, they aren't hobbies, they're engines of possibilities. And thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks, Karen. That was fun. Thank you. Thanks.
Thomas comes off much more like an artist than your typical CEO, and I believe that's what makes his leadership unique. He turned his passion into a reality, and I think the Martin Guitar brand is in good hands while Thomas is plucking the strings. To find out more about Thomas and the Martin Guitar Company, see the show notes below. And remember to always lift.